You want to unfuck your shit?
This is live.
Yeah, that's being recorded. Hey, listen, if you want to unfuck your future, then come and join us in the Real Vision community. Incredible platform, amazing content, some of the smartest people in the world, and amazing tools. And guess what? It'll cost you nothing. Come to realvision.com. I'll see you there, and let's help you unfuck your future. Hey, everyone. As you know, Solana is one of the ecosystems I'm the most interested in. I've been incredibly bullish. I love to see the vibrancy of what is happening in the space. Unfortunately, I couldn't make Breakpoint this year, but the stories have been amazing. I heard the talks are incredible, and we're really proud of Real Vision to give you talks from Solana Breakpoint 2024 in Singapore. I really hope you enjoy them.
Welcome.
All right.
Oh, we're really far apart.
I know. Yeah, we got it's like Romeo and Juliet. All right. Good, go.
Thank you so much for coming, and thanks everybody for coming to Singapore if you flew in. Balaji, I know you don't do in-person appearances very often, so this is really meaningful. One of the themes of Breakpoint this year, there are many themes, but one is just be as efficient as possible. We want to be like a fire hose of information, so I'm going to skip your bio, your PhD, master's, council, earn, A16Z, that you're on the network state now. And I know you have a lot to say about the network school, which you're building here nearby in the Singapore area. We'll get to that. What I'd love to start with is what has your experience been maybe putting a network state lens on Salana, the network and the ecosystem? What's your experience been with Salana?
Great. So, yeah, the main thing right now is, so I think Solana is awesome. I wouldn't be on stage if I didn't think it was awesome. It's actually useful, which is the highest compliment I can give. USDC on Solana actually works. TipLink works for sending NFTs and so on. So I think of Solana as important infrastructure for network states and startup societies, because it just means that a lot of stuff we were talking about theoretically for 10 years, and it was kind of possible with high fees, or kind of possible, but you had to really hack a smart contract, basically just works, and once that goes into infrastructure, you can build on top of it. So I look at Solana as being an important piece, not the only piece certainly. I think of Bitcoin, other things as crucial components as well, but I think of Solana as a crucial piece of infrastructure for the network state.
Yeah. Well, your definition of decentralization, the way you brought sort of a harder, quantified approach to how to measure censorship resistance has been an important part of the Solana roadmap. So, well, first of all, thank you for saying all these nice things, but also want to stress that we focused on decentralizing Solana and making sure we deliver that kind of user experience while actually having a censorship-resistant network, and a lot of that came from your thinking.
Thank you.
Do you have a similar way of sort of quantifying success as a network state? Like if you look at Solana, the ecosystem, the founders,
yes.
As a network state, how do we define success?
Great question. So on quantifying decentralization, that was a paper from several years ago, and I'll just describe that for those who don't know how that works. So lots of people argue about decentralization as almost a theological concept, like something is either not decentralized, or it's centralized, or it's decentralized. But between that 0 and 1, you have many intermediate states, levels of decentralization. And I had this paper from 7 years ago that I think has held up reasonably well on looking at all the choke points in a system and saying, how many actors do you need to choke off a system? For example, if you capture 3 miners or 70 validators, does that compromise the system? And the Nakamoto coefficient is like the minimum number of entities you need to capture to choke point the system, and that's a measure of decentralization. And so Solana is built, I think, in part on that. Obviously, you have a lot of other technological breakthroughs, but to your second question, which is what are the key metrics for a network state? So, everybody here is familiar with CoinMarketCap, and MarketCap and a few other metrics like that have become things that people refresh every day. They're flawed, they're imperfect, but they still are, let's say, roughly correlated with the important success of an asset. People talk about top 5, top 10 coins or whatever, fine. So in the same way, I think we have started cloud currencies that compete with fiat or land currencies. We are going to start cloud countries that compete with fiat countries. And what are the metrics? It's population, real estate, and annual income, which are comparable to the population of a fiat state, the real estate footprint of a fiat state and the annual income. So the population annual income, you can think of it, let's take all Solana holders, for example. You can count their population and you can count their annual income. The part that we haven't really focused on yet is how the cloud takes land. That's the next step for us as a community. How does the cloud take land? And we actually have done this in implicit ways. For example, Facebook's data centers or Google's offices or Solana's validators all around the world are actually taking up significant physical footprint. If you had some NFT that proved how much real estate there was, for example, you have a surveyor go there, and that surveyor sort of is like a notary or an auditor or a proctor of some kind, and they say, okay, this is 50,000 square feet data center or whatever it is, right? And then that's put on chain, and you sum up all of those proof of space NFTs, that would give you a real estate footprint of a decentralized structure, right? And yeah, of course, it's not just space, because you could say, all right, maybe this is the built-out building and this is the land parcel around it. But there's a whole set of things in real estate that you can do, and this you start arguing like you do on market cap. The point is, you start actually now seeing the physical footprint of the Google offices and the Facebook data centers and the Solana data centers.
So you see this with Solana too, right? There are things like Island DAO and Mountain DAO. There are hacker houses. There are conferences like this. There's over 6,000 people here gathered in Singapore for Breakpoint. What I see is a sort of like founder collective of product builders. That's the biggest like in-person experience that we've been able to create, and now it's sort of out of control. It's not driven by any centralized entity. The thing that binds everyone together is that they're building on Solana.
Yes.
Do you think it's those spaces that ultimately seek out like diplomatic recognition? Should we be thinking about like active addresses? And then you mentioned like soul holders.
So,
like which is the metric?
Yeah. So the way I think about it is, just like a startup company needs a technical innovation, I think a startup community needs what I call a moral or social innovation. Like, you need some feature of your community that you think is better than the establishment, and it usually needs to be like one thing. Like, for example, for technology, it's better, it's faster, it's cheaper. Here, take for example cul-de-sac. It's saying, okay, they're in Arizona. They're saying we want a car-free society. So it's all walkable, right? Prospera, which is in Honduras, and Vitalia, they want a biotech-free zone, right? So I think you'd have to exercise sort of new muscles, which are not the technology muscles, but the community, society, morality, history, controversy muscles, right? Where you say, society thinks this, I think something different, I'm going to build it on Solana, right? But Solana, up to this point, has, it's basically solved all the problems of blockchains better, and which is an amazing accomplishment, don't get me wrong, it's really good, right? But it didn't wade into non-blockchain, non-technical controversy. And that's necessarily what like a new society will be, because you're saying, I think we should live like this, and most people are living like that. And that'll immediately start an argument in a good way, because it polarizes, and now these folks say, okay, I do think cars are bad, so I'm moving over here. I do think the FDA is bad, I'm moving over here. So I think that's actually the underlying prerequisite. The technology and the capital and the population is now there. We just need the moral innovators.
Yeah. So features of the way you live, the way you operate daily,
Yes.
that are controversial, that are different.
Yes, I'll give some examples, right? So Brian Johnson and I, we're just setting up the network school, right? And one of the things I talk about in the Network State book is keto kosher, right? So as South Asians, we were just talking, we have, we don't metabolize glucose as well, with glucose dysregulation. And before my first startup, I was as jacked as an Indian could be, given our physiological limits. And we've been poking each other on this, and you've gotten in great shape recently. And what was our little thing?
Well, we were. It was earlier this summer. We were in Dubai in a car.
Yes.
And and I think all I remember is you saying, "Look, I'm going to get jacked."
Yes, I am. Back to jacked, right? But the thing
I love
about
this. It's like I think it's going to be great. Like Bezos, great operational mind.
Yeah.
You have a great mind for networks, like matching with the body.
Here's a constraint. Here's how it relates. Is I as a founder, you have to put the team first, right? What happened? Oh, so someone yelling? Okay.
Just ignore it.
So as a founder, you have to put the team first, and what happens is that basically that means that you lose sleep you overeat.
It's always easy to prioritize the work, the meeting.
Exactly, that's right, because why do they care if you lose 10 minutes, 20 minutes of sleep or whatever, and that adds up and that accumulates or whatever, right? But what we're doing with Network School is we actually use Solana a lot for the proof of workouts, right? And so you'll have actually a tracker, you can see the GitHub streak, and let's see where we are in a year.
Amazing.
So,
yeah. There's a little bit of rhyming here at Mountain DAO. Everybody is getting up super early, first chair, hitting the slopes, putting in really hard work. Tolly and the engineers that he worked with at Qualcomm used to surf every morning. They did Ironmans. I think this is actually relevant to the cultural kind of contribution that Solana has.
Yeah, I think like basically Zuck, Bezos, several, Brian Johnson and so on, that's an emerging part of tech culture is self-improvement, and we just need to productize that. So take it from something that a tech billionaire can do into something that becomes a product. Sort of like how, have you seen Wall Street, the movie, in Wall Street 2? No?
I haven't seen it, no.
There's a sight gag where Michael Douglas comes out of prison and he gets his cell phone back and it's a giant brick, right? And that's because cell phones in the 80s were for the richest of the rich, and now they're for the poorest of the poor, right? And so lots of stuff starts like that as a toy for the rich or whatever. And the reason is because it's an MVP, it barely works, and you pay a premium for it, and then you get the scale. And so I think that's going to happen with self-improvement. And I think actually the crypto community is, they're selected for actually being into this. You know why?
Why?
Because crypto is parallel finance. And it says the existing system exists, but it's fundamentally flawed. We're going to take fundamental assumptions of them and invert it. And so even though surface aspects look the same, like you have bar charts on Wall Street, and you have bar charts in our space and so on, and you have limit orders, and some of the concepts port. Other concepts are just fundamentally morally inverted, like self-custody is good. Well, self-custody is impossible at DTCC, right? Or decentralization is good, and that's impossible in the old system, right? Inflation is bad, and inflation is built into the old system. So we've built a parallel financial system, and the people who are there also have the capital and the moxie, to do other things, and that's why other kinds of parallel systems will be built by the people who built the parallel financial system.
We built the parallel financial system. We can build the parallel health system.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. That's right. And in fact, the parallel financial system is upstream of all of that because, well, first you can fund it all, right, and that's important. And second is the legacy system will deplatform and choke point anything that's like too good relative to it, right? Like it's just almost like a meta-organism. Think about, let's say Microsoft Windows, right? Anything that was built on Microsoft Windows that was too good, they used the platform against you. That's why you needed your own sovereignty. And in fact, in the 2000s and the early 2010s, deplatforming had a very different, the conversation around deplatforming had a different character to what it does today. It wasn't about political deplatforming, it was about economic deplatforming, right? For example, there's a Farmville, right? Zynga was basically going viral on Facebook and was deplatformed from Facebook.
Yeah, Steve Jobs famously said, I would have never let Farmville get that big.
Yeah, exactly.
Which meant he had the control.
That's right, that's right. And essentially, if you are, moderately successful, the platform's happy to have you. If you're getting so big that you're comparable to the scale of the platform has lots of different levers. For example, Twitter, there was this video app that I forget that was going viral on Twitter, and Twitter just basically cut them out of the feed, and they got Vine instead, and they prioritized Vine in the feed, right? Yeah. So if you can understand it from an economic standpoint, you can understand it from a political standpoint, and those things fuse, where often people use the economic justification for what they want to do politically or vice versa. But attacks by platforms are going to become more and more and more important. And that's why crypto becomes more important, because it gives you defense against attacks by platforms. So that's how I see where the world is going. Keep going. You're going to.
Well, maybe we can switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
I think one of the use cases that we see exploding on Solana is DPIN, decentralized physical infrastructure networks like Helium and HiveMapper that have rebuilt 5G wireless networks and mapping networks. HiveMapper has remapped 25% of the world's roads in a year. When I look at what you talk about with the network state, I haven't seen a connection yet between these cloud first, land second kind of movements, and then the obvious clear today examples that we have of cloud first and hardware second.
Yeah.
How do those connect?
Well, so first is that mapping between cloud and land. If the network state is about real estate. Okay, just as much as cryptocurrency is about fiat currency. And what I mean by that is, In theory, cryptocurrency exists completely independent of the fiat world. In practice, the practical details of the crypto fiat exchange, that's a $100 billion industry that I was heavily involved in, and you're obviously very aware of. And it's going to become a $1 trillion industry. That bridge is like, it's literally like going over the Atlantic or going over the Pacific. Going up and down into the cloud is something that you will just constantly do. Going from the land to the cloud and back, it's almost like a transatlantic voyage, right? It's a new world. And so cryptocurrency was about fiat currency, and when you built that exchange, then you could onboard into the pure crypto world, and you can do crypto trading, and you don't have to worry about it, right? And you're in the new world, and it's fine. But if you need to go back and forth, and lots of people need to onboard before they become full crypto, this bridge was important. In the same way, the network state is about real estate. And so, like, I've had to deal with more plumbing, electrical work, carpentry, painting, all the physical stuff for building. I'll put a video out online soon with all the time-lapse stuff. It's actually pretty awesome. Network school sign going up, right? But all the DPIN stuff, I need to make a list of all the tools, and as they become robust, then we start using them to prove our physical blueprint to the world, and then also build everything IoT first. Why is that? Because IoT, there's actually this Twitter feed called like Internet of Shit or something like that, which is all about how IoT makes things worse, and like, oh my God, it's a complicated lock, and why don't you just unlock it with a key, and that's robust, and so on and so forth. And I'm sympathetic to that in some ways. But if you have a smart lock that's unlocked by a Solana wallet, well, that means your Solana wallet doesn't just secure your coins, it secures your doors and your cars and your office and your this and your that, right? And that means your crypto wallet is now upstream, not just of, let's say, millions of dollars of digital assets, but millions of dollars of physical assets, or millions of SOL, I should say, right? Anyway, keep going.
Well, so as you think about building these products and securing the space, can you talk a little bit about how, let's say an island DAO or a mountain DAO should, go through that work of actually securing land and securing diplomatic recognition? Like, what are the steps?
What's the steps? So we're building the playbook now, right? The network school is a tech community that is also meant to boot up other tech communities, right? So this is, what we're going to do is prototype a lot of this stuff for ourselves, and so we don't broadcast something unless we know it's working for us at 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 person scale. As I'll talk about, the piece of land that we've got can actually scale up to hundreds of thousands of people. Like, we can go from, right now we're at a Dunbar number stage, like a Stanford dorm room, and you get to 1,000, it's like the scale of a Stanford undergrad class. Then you get to 10,000, it's like the scale of Stanford itself. 100,000 is the scale of Stanford and Palo Alto, and 1 million is the scale of San Francisco. As we scale up, and we're built to scale, we will put everything we possibly can, open source and open state. Did we talk about that, open state?
Yeah.
Yeah, so open source, it was V1, and open state is what blockchains are, because you open the back end too, not just the front end. The database is public, not just the code, right? So by making everything we can open source and open state, then we publish what we're doing, and other communities can learn from that playbook, right? So to give you some of the things that are working now, for example, one thing that we have, and I'll publish on this, is what I call the ideology vector, okay? Do you know, like, Harry Potter, the Sorting Hat?
Harry Potter?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Harry Potter.
Okay, so I don't know. I actually, I'm a little bit older than you guys, maybe feel like. So Harry Potter came out, it was really popular just after, I was a kid. So there's this concept from it called like the Sorting Hat, which puts people into different schools or whatever, and everybody's got their own, school that's appropriate to them. So one thing we have is something that I call the ideology vector, where we actually ask up front about all these polarizing questions, right? Like, example, like, what's your position on nuclear power or something like that, right? That's not, for our audience, we're very pro, other people are con, right? So you ask a bunch of questions like that about political figures, about countries, like, what's your position on Dubai, what's your position, or that's not a country, cities, what's your position on this cryptocurrency and that one, and within our community, that's very polarizing, right? And you get, let's say you ask 100 questions and you ask +10, -10 sentiment, you have a 100-dimensional vector. That vector can now be used to cluster people into communities, and that's actually the new borders, but in digital space. And so that's actually so you're asking for subroutines. There's like 50 subroutines like this that I think of as emerging best practices for startup societies. Another big one, a very important one that we've kind of figured out in the last couple of years, and it's called this sort of proven now at this point, is you have to your startup starts with a pop-up. You can't go like directly to a full built-out metropolis or whatever in your head. Like it's hard enough to get a few hundred or a few thousand people. Like this was a logistical effort, a little bit, right?
Yeah. Great job, team.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. Great job to the team here for everything they did, right? This is itself like a mini city in its own right?
Yeah.
And actually, the next step is it's funny, you know how people make fun of sometimes the crypto community, oh, crypto is just a bunch of conferences and people go to those conferences and so on. But that's actually one of our hidden strengths, you know why?
Why?
Because we're used to setting up mini cities around the world like that.
Yeah.
We have all these like fairly technically savvy, hungry, mobile, risk-tolerant people who will go around to these things and they think of themselves as part of the Solana community rather than, geo-locked, right? You're like an unlocked phone, you can operate worldwide, right? So we can set up the physical infrastructure, we've got the financial infrastructure which is portable across borders, we've got the people who are mobile, we've got all the prerequisites now to just start taking territory and take this from a one-day thing into a 365-day thing.
Amazing. It reminds me of the first Breakpoint that we had. It was right after COVID lockdowns, which, by the way, your forecast of what was going to happen during COVID lockdowns actually had an impact on us because we launched the network on March 16th, 2020.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta give you huge props. Like a lot of people had their roadmaps completely derailed in 2020.
Every investor was calling every founder saying, cancel your launch, do your layoffs, hunker down, it's gonna be a slog, and focus on survival. And I think your forecast of what was gonna happen, and the idea that obviously it would be good for crypto, this would be the moment for crypto to actually accelerate, not decelerate. Otherwise it's not useful, what's it here for? That was a really big moment for us, so thank you for that.
Well, the thing about that is, just to speak with that for a second, that was an unfortunate event for the whole world. But what it did is it powered up both the state and the network. Like the state got powered up with lockdowns, with tracking of people, with all of these emergency authorities, just 9/11 to the nth power, in terms of, surveillance, civil liberties, and so on. But the network also got powered up. So freedom also got powered up. Crypto got powered up. Remote work got powered up. Video conferencing, contracts could get signed online. We flipped in many ways to an internet-first world after 2020. I think future historians will look back on that and realize that was the moment that the internet became primary and the physical world became secondary. And for example, like you write a document first, and only if it's really important, you print it out. You go through a shopping cart first online, and only if it's really important, you hit a button and you print it out to your door. You look online for an Uber, or a Grab, and if it's time, then you hit a button and it comes to your door, right? And you have your cryptocurrency. And that's where if you have 1% of your net worth in cryptocurrency today, you'll have 100% of your net worth in cryptocurrency by 2040 or thereabouts. Like that's what currency becomes, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that flipped to the internet first world. You guys were extremely well positioned for that, and you did extremely well. So very good job on that.
So as you've been building out the network state infrastructure, you've been using things like TipLink, you've used Superteam, you've used Phantom, all of these primitives. Have you? And then you've been doing the work of establishing the network school and working with plumbers and contractors and all these things.
Yeah.
What have any product ideas started to emerge for
Oh my
you?
God. So many. So actually, I'm
Let's
going
hear
to be putting up some bounties on these. Basically, the quote idea guy is not worth that much, but the idea plus capital guy is now worth something, right? So the idea plus capital guy is a person who is time limited, but not capital limited. I just don't have time to build all the stuff that I'd love to see built, right? So you mentioned some of these products like Phantom Wallet. The wallet just works, and you can just like go like this, boom, and USDC back and forth. And by the way, you know that I launched USDC, right? Do you know that?
Yeah, I do know that.
Yeah.
You've launched so many things. It's hard to remember.
USDC at Coinbase, if you go back and look, September 2018, there's a story of that for a second, because now I use USDC every day, but basically, in September 2018, Circles, they had a smart contract for, just to digress on this for a second, because it's an important part of the Solana ecosystem. They had a smart contract that was audited and it worked, but they didn't have any distribution and so on. And if you go back and look, before the Coinbase USDC launch, USDC's market cap was like 10 million or $0, like as of like September 1st, 2018, right? And then you can go and look at the YouTube video, I'll post that after this if you want, where we launched USDC. We launched on Coinbase and we set up, because the only way it would work is if you had multiple exchanges adopting it, and we had to figure out all the decentralization stuff and the redemption stuff. So that turned it from a audited smart contract into what, the V1 of USDC, and we put Coinbase's exchange behind it, and we did all that stuff. We did that with, what I did on that? We just took 2 engineers, and the hardest part was me just clearing away every single meeting. And when people wanted to try to get a meeting with them, I would stand outside the room, and HR was not allowed. Nobody could bug them for any signatures or anything. I really didn't care. The government could throw us in jail. Like, there would be no signatures. Nobody would bother my engineers, right? Giving them that 30 days of just total protected time, we shipped the whole thing in basically a month. And now it's at $35 billion from 10 million. And USDC on Sol with Phantom Wallet, it just works. TipLink, you can send, it's like MailChimp for NFTs. And remind me why did I get a
Product ideas.
Good?
Product ideas.
Okay, right. So what are product ideas? So one thing I'd like to have is a NFT check-in. Okay, so for example, at the front desk over here, you have a pretty cool check-in thing where you show your barcode and you're in, right? So connecting NFT check-in to an NFT gated door lock would be, I think, a pretty important thing. And if the thing is, you have to figure out the right application for it. Airbnb hosts are good because they are tech savvy and they have an incentive to let lots of people in and out over the internet, so they don't have to be there physically to let them in the door, right? So I think we're now at the point that NFT door locks and NFT check-in is one thing, so that's number one. Number two is, we're going to talk about this at the Network State Conference in a few days, but there's this great image of unbundling of banks where they take a screenshot of a bank homepage and they highlight loans and wire transfers and this, that, and the other. And now today, you can take every single part of that and you can circle it and you can show the Solana product that basically is okay, here's how we unbundled the bank, and here's how we unbundled the derivative, and here's how we unbundled the savings account and interest.
This is weird because you were just asking me backstage to send you my slides for the network state, and those are 2 slides in the deck.
Yes, that's right. Because I did. Well, we talked.
Okay, we've been talking.
That's right. So that is the roadmap for literally unbundling the entire banking system and putting it on chain. Because USDC Sol means that anybody gets essentially root access to the banking system, right? You can send and receive arbitrary quantities of money, even if in USD, even if you're in Brazil and India and Hungary or whatever, Japan, right? And the thing about that, by the way, is most people don't realize how big a deal that is because one way of putting it, for example, is multinational corporations don't really exist until the blockchain. You know why?
Why?
Because if, let's say you're in Brazil and you want to acquire a company in Bangladesh, how many people have done a Portuguese Urdu contract? Who knows the tax obligations for that between those two things? What happens instead is you set up a US adapter because the US did enough business with Brazil and enough business with Bangladesh. Or you might set up a China adapter because they also do business with the whole world. China, that's their own ecosystem. The Chinese can do that, nobody else can really. But those are the two hub nodes of the whole world in terms of legal and financial infrastructure. Miami, for example, is used as the hub for Latin America because if you're Mexican and Argentinian, you do a deal in Miami and that would be where the banking and contracts are signed, a neutral jurisdiction, an entrepot. Singapore is that role for Southeast Asia to some extent, right? But now you have the blockchain for contract enforcement. And over time, we go from having transactions on chain to accounting on chain, right, for small companies and startups. That's already happening, right? Yep. To once you have accounting, you can have an on-chain SEC because you're provable, cryptographically verifiable accounting, and you can have an SEC. When you have an SEC, you can have on-chain investment and so on and so forth, yep. And capital formation. I mean, we have lots of pieces of this, right?
We've seen this in the Marshall Islands too, where they're starting to replace actual paper contracts with smart contracts.
Yes.
It might take 20 years, but they'll eventually swap them out.
That's right. So all you need, so for example, so you mentioned the Marshall Islands. The Cayman Islands, which is, not the Marshall Islands, but the Cayman Islands only has a population of 70,000 people. It's like a small town, basically, right? But what they do have is they have a flag, they have sovereignty, and they're a UN member. And that sovereignty is worth billions, hundreds of billions of dollars to them. Literally billion-dollar funds are headquartered in Cayman, right? So all of these small countries, their biggest asset is their sovereignty. What do they lack, though? They lack population. They lack income. That's what we have.
Yeah.
So there's a market.
This is like 10% of the Caymans right here.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. That's right. Exactly. That's right. So there's absolutely a market to be made between small countries and large clouds, right? Like big chains and small countries can do amazing deals together where we give them the followers, the online strength, the capital that they just don't have. And they have, crucially, the international recognition and sovereignty. It's like a banking license, but it's a sovereignty license, right?
So we have 1 minute left.
Ahead.
2 questions. One, will you be here at the conference for the next few days? Will you be around to speak with folks?
I will. So this is like the busiest week of my life, maybe one of the top few, right? Because I'm launching the network school. But I will be, I will be at the Network State Conference on 22nd.
And that's going to be here at this venue at the other
this
stage.
venue, yeah, exactly. So everybody should go if you like this. Actually, we're doing a home and home. Raj is going to be speaking there. So go to thenetworkstate.com/conference or ns.com/conference. Oh, I love that URL so much, right?
This is great. It's like affiliate marketing. It's like web rings in the early.
And put in code Breakpoint, you'll get a little bit off. Okay, so I'd love to see all you guys there. So, and we're going to do a long Q&A at the end. So you have questions for me, come to the Network State Conference, and happy to see you there.
All right. I want to two more things. One is on a lighter note. I love bets. I think anybody who's my friend knows that I like making bets. Can we make a bet about you getting actually jacked?
Okay, so I'm coming.
Let's say by next Breakpoint.
Next year Breakpoint, I'm gonna post the Rocky style progress video, rain or shine. Okay.
Okay.
And we'll put it on screen, and the audience can say if it worked or not.
Okay, great. We'll work out the rest of the terms on Twitter.
Okay,
but
great.
Next Breakpoint, Balaji's gonna be super jacked.
All right, let's see.
Amazing.
All right.
And then last thing is, you have this great photo at the last Network State Conference of you in a selfie with the beginnings of the whole community. Do you want to do a selfie with the Solana Network State?
Great.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome. Let's do it.
We hope you enjoyed the video. At Real Vision, we help you understand the complex world of finance, business, and the global economy with in-depth analysis from real experts. Join the revolution at realvision.com.